I was told it was going to be 1 week before my next jump. As it turned out, it was actually 2 weeks before my next jump. No idea why. Mainly because I didn't ask. The only thing I did ask was if they suspended all their genetic fuckery. Even the high ranking personnel assured me that everything had been put on hold. In truth, I didn't believe them, but it wasn't like I was going that far. In fact, I was only going 14 years. This confused me since my clearance allows me to jump up to 210 years now. Also, my last few jumps were 70 years minimum. I kept asking them why this was, and all I got was some half-ass answers about how no one was jumping that far for a while. With no clear answers, I made sure that my loadout was really heavy. My rifle was always going to be chambered in 7.62 by 54. My two pistols, one was a 45 caliber, the other one was a Taurus Judge, chambered with, loaded, I should say, with 410. And this time, I brought a few extra blades with me. I made sure they were full tang K-bars. Why the knives? Because they don't run out of bullets. Surprisingly, I had a few techs come help me get my gear on this time. Not sure why the change of heart, since they're usually pretty hands-off with us jumpers. For a minute, I was worried they strapped something more explosive on me. That's until I asked another jumper to check me. He said I was good, but this had me still a little on edge. So, just for shits and giggles, I went back to the armor and got 4 M67 frag grenades, along with 2 smokes. I thought about incendiary, but couldn't think of a situation where I would actually need it. The jump itself was, thankfully, smooth. A bit smoother than usual, actually, which was a little weird. I didn't want to dwell on it since the morning sun had just started to illuminate the fields of the house. This time, though, something still felt off. I looked around, and the fields hadn't been tended in at least a season. I could tell due to the amount of shrubbery that was beginning to poke above the hay. I was suddenly on high alert. I took a knee and used my ACOG on the rifle to check my surroundings. The house looks quiet. I couldn't see any movement around the outside or through the windows. I scanned over the barns. The doors were open, but I didn't see any livestock. Nothing was moving around the entire area, minus the occasional squirrel or small bird. Suddenly wishing I had a ghillie suit, I could move more cautiously to the house. There was still no movement from inside the house as I moved up. Not even the sound of voices. The lawn had not been tended in at least a few weeks, as the grass was just getting above my ankle to boots. I looked to the side, and the mower was out in the middle of the lawn. It was like they had started and just suddenly stopped for some reason. I looked around for one of those creatures to come out of the forest, but still nothing moved. The fact that I could hear wildlife put me a little at ease in this regard, but I was still ready to rock and roll. I climbed the stairs to the porch and noticed that the front door wasn't fully shut. Even though I kept my thumb on the safety lever at all times, it is just the way that you're taught so that you have to rotate it at any moment. And as I reached the door, I rotated the safety lever and heard the metallic click right before I moved my finger into the trigger well. I moved, and the front door didn't make a sound as I pushed it open. What I saw and smelled inside was not what I was expecting. As I moved in, there was obvious signs of weapon exchange. In other words, there was a firefight in the house. There were pools of dried blood and spots all over the first floor. I moved silently through each room as I checked each corner to make sure I was the only one there. As I walked by the countertop, I saw that it was covered with blood and slash marks. This didn't make sense, but I did run my finger across just to see how fresh it was. It was dry, so whatever happened had been done a long time before I got there. After clearing the bottom floor, I moved as quietly as I could to the second floor. I remembered to skip the one squeaky step that every house seems to have. At the top of the stairs, there was the bathroom. There were old towels on the ground, and the sink looked like somebody had cleaned blood off themselves in it. All the hand towels were covered in old blood. that was now dry and brittle. Knowing the master bedroom was to the right, I turned and pushed the door open. I saw two bodies on the bed, clearly deceased, so I cleared the rest of the room. Afterwards, I went back to the bodies and got a closer look. It was two females, stripped naked with their throats slit open. And whoever did it did a sloppy job, too. The younger of the two was cut deep enough that she probably was done in just a few seconds. The older one, most likely, laid there choking on her own fluids for at least a minute before passing out and then bleeding out slow. Since the top floor had not been cleared yet, I went to the other side, where I found the body of an infant boy. He had clearly been left to die of dehydration. There were no marks on his form from any trauma, but it wasn't until I stopped to think that I ran back to the master bedroom. I looked closely and realized that this woman was the original farmer's wife, and the young girl was his niece. I stood in shock for a moment as I realized what they had been assaulted. Yes, they had been assaulted that way too. From the amount of marks on the body, I would say that the group had taken turns, whoever had done this. I didn't know which one of them was the boy's mother, but that didn't matter anymore. Walking back to the stairs, I just wanted to get some air. So I walked to the back porch and noticed something next to the kitchen window. There was a pile of organic material that looked human. Walking up, I could see that the little critters had already started to chew on it. The amount of bugs made it difficult to stomach, but I had to see what I was working with. I used a stick to move some of the pieces, and that's when I saw it. The severed head of my contact. And I'll admit it, I just turned and puked everything at that moment. Running inside, I ended up in the kitchen and began to look closer at the countertop. Those were cleaver marks, and the amount of blood told me that the ones outside had been butchered. Literally. Looking around, I found that all the food was gone. What the hell? Why? I started to get the shakes, so to calm them, I went to the barns. There was not a single animal left. It looks like the cattle had been butchered on the spot. In the corner, someone had rigged up a crude smoker to cure the meat for travel. A quick look around the property showed that every resources had been taken. The fuel tanks were dry, the vehicles were gone or stripped for parts. The feed for the animals was gone too. I found the remains of a couple of dogs too. They'd been shot with a shotgun and unceremoniously tossed in the side. With everything I saw, the best I figured was that they came across this farm and decided that it was a bounty they just couldn't pass up. Probably surprised the owner when he told them to go away, in more words, I'm sure. Pretty sure they sent the dogs in first and came shooting in after. With the amount of remains, I would guess there was about 6 to 10 bodies butchered. So if it was just him, shooting back, then he made them pay for their meal, and that's for sure. Not sure why they didn't eat the dogs. Best guess is that the buckshot blew up in the intestines, contaminating the meat. So they were just discarded. What could lead people to be so vicious? Didn't know, didn't care. They killed my friend, and now they were gone. It wouldn't do any good to think about it too much. After all, by my next jump, they could easily be brought back. I was able to get the intel from that my employer wanted, though this time I hung up my gear in the other room and watched the news. The mainstream sources still suck, but I did get what I needed. I could put things together pretty well with the food shortages being exasperated to such an insane degree. When will people learn to not make situations worse than it already is? Although having massive ecological troubles doesn't help matters at all. After about 2 hours, I collected my gear and headed to the recall point. I was grateful that the recordings will stop this from coming to pass, but it just seems like certain people are craving our destruction. Although what they constantly forget is that this will bring their destruction as well. It just takes a little longer. I'll be grateful to put this jump behind me. I jumped back and didn't say a word as I turned in my gear. I don't have much of an appetite tonight, but that bottle of old Granddad 114 is very inviting. I sit here thinking about all that has happened and what's going to happen in the next jump in a month. Yeah, they're spreading them out a lot more. I was first in the chute after the monster dance, after all. All I could do is look ahead. I mean, this is the job, right? Let's let's just hope that things are different the next time too. Oh, fuck me. Why an emergency deployment now?